Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be learning how to create a shop within Rooms 2.0 by using a dialog UI. There are many ways of doing this. I'm just going to be showing you my design for this specific shop. This design of the shop will have a menu screen, and when we click it, it will give us the options within the shop. As we continue to click the menu screen, it will cycle through those, and we can choose to purchase or sell that specific item. Because I've created a video on how dialog UI works previously, I'm going to focus on the layout of the shop and how to set up the shop rather than how this dialog UI is going to work. If you want a full explanation of those circuits, go watch that other video. This is the basic setup for the shop, where we have the dialog UI in gray and 3 separate items that we're going to be sifting through. Now to set this up, when we click on the menu of the dialog UI, the very first menu screen, the output is going to go into the first option, and then when the first option's menu is clicked, it's going to go into the second option. And we're going to repeat that for the next one, and when we get to the very last one, it's going to repeat by going back into the first one. Make sure that each of these dialog UI set dialog texts are set to true for is interactable. As you can see, it's going to work as intended when we click on this, that it's going to go from one option to the next option to the next option, and then repeat with the first option. Now we're going to set up the buttons. Because each of these screens have the same button layout with either purchase or sell as our options, each of these outputs are going to be put into the input of a single set dialog UI button state. As you can see, we have the first set to true with purchase, the second button set to true with sell, and then both the other buttons are set to false because they are not needed. Now that this is set up to show us the buttons, when we click on it, the buttons will pop up, but they currently do nothing. So that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to set up the shop itself. To sell something, we're going to be using the inventory item constant and the inventory item get count. I've colored them red because this correlates with the very first option. So we're going to configure the inventory item constant with that first option and then define it in the get count. The total count is going to go into a greater or equal than chip to tell how many we have, and because we're only selling one of these, it's going to be put to 1. That output is going to be put into an if chip, which will be executed when the item get count is run. This means that when run, it's going to check to see if the player owns this item. If they own at least one of these, then it's going to move on to the next option. So a mistake that I came across while editing the video was that the inventory item get count, the total count output, when it's going inside the greater or equal than chip, it needs to go inside the A input and not the B input, because otherwise your equation or your circuits are going to look like this. That execution is going to go into an inventory item remove, in which case we're going to remove the exact same inventory item that we were checking for before. The quantity that we were removing is only going to be 1. However, if you're going to be selling some sort of bundle or pack, you can change this quantity, but make sure to change the greater or equal than as well. If we left things how it was, then we'd just be stealing from the player. So we're going to give them gold in exchange for that item. So when the inventory item remove is complete, it's going to run another inventory item add, in which case we're going to be awarding them the currency of the world. So that is going to be defined in the inventory item add, and we're going to put the price in which we are selling that item. To buy something in this shop, we're going to be checking to see how much currency the player owns. So we're going to have an inventory item constant configured to the currency, and then an inventory item get count, and define that constant to that chip. We're going to be checking to see how much currency the player owns. So that output is going to go into a greater or equals than chip. That chip is going to be comparing it against the price of the item. In this case, it's going to be 100. Make sure to continue the circuits so that when the check is complete, the if chip runs. What's going to happen when the player does own enough currency is it's going to remove that currency from their inventory. So make sure to define this inventory item with the constant used before and continue the run circuit. The quantity for both the inventory item removed and the greater or equal than is going to be the same because that is the price of the item that the player is buying. When removed, it will continue on and give that player that item. So in this case, it's going to be defined by the very first item. Then repeat the process for each item that you're wanting to sell or purchase. You can also do as I have here and combine the inventory item constants so that there's only one for each purchase and sell to help with the chip count. The last thing that we're going to do before we connect this to the dialog UI is we're going to be putting in 2 player show subtitles. These player show subtitles are going to tell you when your transaction is complete or if the transaction did not go through. You can customize these messages to whatever you want. I'm just adding them to let the player know when they have actually purchased the item or when they cannot. Adding these into the shop is pretty easy. All we have to do is go to the final inventory item add and go to the complete output and run it into the input of the player show subtitle that tells the player when the transaction has successfully been completed. When the transaction cannot occur, we're going to run the else output of the if chip into the player show subtitle that tells the player that the transaction did not work. We're going to follow these steps and go down the line and connect every single one into those 2 player show subtitles. As you can see, the blue is the transaction failed and green is the transaction succeeded. They are all connected to those 2 player show subtitles, and we are now ready to connect everything to the dialog UI. Because we color-coded this, it's going to make everything super simple. All we have to do is connect the colors. We can know if it's purchase or sell over here in the shop when we look at the gold first. When we buy something, we need enough gold to buy it. When we sell something, we need to own the item to sell it and get gold at the end. With that basic understanding, all we have to do is connect them. The first button going into the purchase and the second button going into the buy. Do that for each of the colors, and then we're done. Now that that is done, when I click these buttons, it will give me whatever I told it to. So if I'm selling, I'm going to get gold back, and if I'm buying, I'm going to get the item. Well, that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I want to tell you that this map that I've been working on in this series has been published, and so you can go in and see how all the different circuitry works together with the different collection systems and the shops. Oh, it's nighttime now. Anyways, this map is now published. If you want to see how the series circuitry works together to build a better RPG, you can check it out. There's a few more tutorials I want to make, but while I wait for some things to get added to Rooms 2.0, I'll be working on another series I've wanted to do for some time. I'll see you later in the library, Historians.